welcome to Elements of Ayurveda, Empowering Wisdom of Life. I'm your host, Colette, and in this podcast, I hope to empower you to take charge of your own health by sharing the holistic teachings of Ayurveda, the ancient healing tradition from India. We will also discuss topics like health and wellness, nutrition, yoga, fitness, meditation, breath work, and much more, as well as interviewing lots of inspiring people along the way. My humble wish is to help you to connect to your true nature, to Mother Nature, and to each other. If you like the content, be sure to subscribe to the show, and the new episodes will automatically download for you to enjoy. If you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend you listen to the first couple of episodes where I do an introduction to Ayurveda and the mind-body types. I've also set up a Facebook group for us to connect and to support each other, and I'd love for you to join me over at Elements of Ayurveda podcast group. And now, here's the show. Hello, and welcome to Elements of Ayurveda. It's Colette, and today I'm answering your questions. I put a post out there recently on the Elements of Ayurveda podcast Facebook group asking for questions. I also put it in my newsletter and I got some great questions back. So I'm going to answer those today for you, and thanks to all of you who submitted questions. Now, before I start, I like to make my disclaimer before I start answering these questions, and that is that this advice obviously is general advice on the doshas of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. However, we understand in Ayurveda that we each have a unique constitution, a unique blend of 2 or 3 of these doshas, and therefore there's no one treatment that's going to suit everyone. There's no one size fits all in Ayurveda. An Ayurvedic treatment is tailored to each individual. And so I really encourage that you get a private consultation in order to receive advice and treatment that's tailored to your needs. This is what's so special about Ayurveda. However, today's show, I can give general advice, but for serious conditions, always recommend having a private consultation. And that way, an Ayurvedic expert can assess your situation, determine the root cause, determine how you got into this particular situation, and then tailor the treatment to you. And I also want to let you know that I still offer that 20-minute free online discovery call. I'm going to offer it until July 19th, 2019. So if you're looking for some advice and guidance, you can contact me there. And of course, I do in-depth online consults as well. You can find all that on my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com. So with that disclaimer out of the way, let's get into the questions today. And the first one comes from Borislava. And she said that I was wondering, do you have suggestions for improving digestion without aggravating Pitta? Great question, Borislava. And especially now in the Northern Hemisphere, we're in summer. And this is something that we really need to be aware of, make sure that we're not aggravating Pitta. Now, absolutely, there are certain foods that improve the Agni or the digestive fire. Agni is what Ayurveda calls the digestive fire without aggravating Pitta. But before I jump into the answer, I want to clarify that Agni is our digestive fire and has similar qualities to the Pitta dosha. The similar qualities are hot, light, subtle, and sharp. So Pitta also has hot, light, subtle, and sharp qualities. Now, Agni, the energy of Agni, resides in Pitta and represents the healing energy of Pitta, but it is not Pitta. A lot of people get that confused. It is the energy, the Agni is the energy, the heating energy that resides in Pitta, but it is not Pitta. And because of these hot, light, sharp qualities, people with a high Pitta constitution normally have a really strong Agni or a really strong digestive fire. However, the digestive fire can be affected by an imbalance of other doshas and can result in an imbalanced digestive fire. There are 4 states of Agni. One is Sama Agni, and then there's Vishama Agni, Tikshna Agni, and Manda Agni. Now, let's go through those briefly. Sama Agni is considered a balanced Agni, or to balanced digestive fire, where the food is digested well. So obviously this is our goal, right? To have Sama Agni. Vishama Agni is a variable Agni, and this one is usually related to a person with a high Vata constitution. It's variable, so the food digests well sometimes, and other times it may be very weak, resulting in excessive gas or bloating and other digestive problems as well. Now, Tikshna Agni is a sharp Agni, and this one is usually related to the Pitta dosha, where the food digests quickly and the Agni really comes on very sharply or very fast. And then finally we have the Manda Agni, which is a slow or weak Agni, and that's related to the Kapha dosha, where the food takes time to digest and the digestion can be sluggish. Now, as I said, our goal is to have Sama Agni, where we're digesting efficiently and there's no problems with digestion. So when Vata is aggravated, the Agni tends to become Vishama Agni, which results in variable Agni. And so sometimes digestion may be fine, and other times you may suffer from the excessive bloating, the gas, the burping, maybe loud gurgling in the stomach, maybe constipation. And because it's variable, the elimination can also go from being constipated to having diarrhea. So that too, the bowel movements can be really variable as well. When Pitta is aggravated, the Agni tends to become Tikshna, which results in a strong appetite and the food digesting actually too quickly, which may result in burning and hyperacidity. You might get heartburn and other inflammatory conditions, basically any conditions with itis at the end of the word. That's all to do with inflammation. And of course, there may be diarrhea or loose stool here as well. And then when Kapha is aggravated, the Agni tends to become Manda, which results in a sluggish, slow digestion, maybe a low appetite, and the body and mind may feel heavy and lethargic. And there may also be a lot of congestion in the body. So in this case, Borislava, if your digestion is weakened, and you said that you're a high Pitta constitution concerned about aggravating Pitta, well, then here are some things I would recommend. The first thing I would recommend is fennel, the spice fennel. Now, fennel is special in that it stimulates the Agni, the digestive fire, without aggravating the Pitta dosha. So fennel has that slightly sweet and pungent taste, but it has a cooling energy and an overall nourishing effect on the body. And according to Ayurveda, fennel is excellent for digestion. It tones the digestive system and is particularly good for stimulating, like I said, the digestive fire without aggravating that Pitta dosha. Now, ways you could use the fennel seeds, well, you could saute whole fennel seeds in a little ghee and add it to dishes. You could add the ground fennel spice to sauces. You could just have some roasted fennel seeds. You often see that in Indian restaurants, and having this after a meal to aid digestion. And you could also use it not only in savory dishes, but also in sweet or like in baked goods. Fennel is also often used in baked goods as well. And of course, fennel tea is great, and that's a great way to add it into your day. Taking maybe a tablespoon of whole fennel seeds and either putting them in a mesh tea bowl and pouring over some hot water, or you can boil them for 2 or 3 minutes and let them steep, and then just sipping on that throughout the day. So that's a great way if you need to bring it with you on the go to work or anything. Another good food to have is ghee. And I did a whole episode about ghee, which you can find, and I go into detail about ghee, which is the clarified butter. But ghee aids digestion, and it's also tridoshic, meaning that it's balancing to all the doshas, so it does not aggravate Pitta. And it also aids in elimination and purification and really lubricating the body and the intestines. So that's another one I highly recommend. And other things that would really help improve your digestion are things like sipping on hot water or warm water throughout the day. Sometimes if the water food or drinks are very hot, they can aggravate Pitta. So maybe warm water is enough for you. But just sipping on just some plain warm water throughout the day stimulates the digestive fire. Also making sure that you're allowing enough time in between meals to digest. oftentimes we get caught up on what time the clock says, and we may not be hungry for lunch, but it says it's lunch hour, so we must eat. So just have more awareness rather than looking at the clock for what time you should eat, just tuning into your body and waiting until the previous meal has digested. And the best rule of thumb is if you're not hungry, don't eat. Your body's not ready for food. Making sure also that you're eating a simple diet right now. If your digestion is compromised, eating cooked foods that are easy digestible, things like soups, things that are freshly cooked and that will digest really well. That's the best thing to stick with right now, making sure you're not overeating or eating late in the evening. So I would always advise that you have an early light dinner and finish eating by 7 p.m., so giving you a few hours to digest before bed, and making sure that your main meal is in the middle of the day when the digestive fire is at its strongest, and then having a lighter meal at the end of the day. So like I said, something like a soup would be great, easy digestible. And then, of course, it's really important to eat in a calm environment. So making sure if you're at work during the day that you're stepping away from your desk, your computer, and making sure that you're not eating when you're driving, making sure that when you're eating at home, that you don't have the news on or you don't have a lot of sensory stimulation. Sitting in a quiet place, that can be hard sometimes if you have a big family and children, but at least try turn off the TV or the radio or any extra sensory stimulation, and try have your meal as much as possible in a calm environment, and make sure it's not a stressful environment. So Borislav, I hope that helps with your question about improving digestion without aggravating Pitta. We know that Pitta is aggravated by anything pungent or sour or salty, those tastes. And of course, any intensity in life, any overworking or overstress or overanalyzing or being overly competitive, all that aggravates Pitta and in turn will aggravate the Pitta dosha. And so we have to be careful that we don't use too many heating spices, because the majority of spices are heating. So those tips I gave you, especially for using the fennel will be your friend here, because it will stimulate the digestion without aggravating Pitta, the ghee, and then bringing in those lifestyle modifications, sipping on the hot water, making sure that you're eating in a good environment and that you're not overeating, or that you're making sure that you're not eating before your previous meal is digested. So all those will help you out, Borislava. And of course, if you have any further questions, just email me if you need any more further clarification, or book that discovery call, and I'd be more than happy to help you out. So before we go into the next question, I wanted to let you know about my upcoming Ayurveda and Yoga retreat, which is happening October 11th to the 13th, 2019, right here on the French Riviera, just a few miles from Nice. And this weekend is going to be a weekend of healing and connection. And we're going to talk about Ayurveda. We're going to focus on mindfulness medicine, lifestyle medicine, and food as medicine. We're also going to be doing yoga classes. We're going to hang out. We're going to swim in the Med. The weather is fantastic here in October and all the tourists have gone, so it's a great time to be here. And the village of Villefranche, where I'm hosting the retreat, it has a beautiful bay, so great swimming, and just it's a really special little village, which is why I'm excited to have a group here and to really connect in this special place. So you can find out all the details on my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com/retreat, or just click on the link in the show notes. Now, I do have a discount going on if you book before July 31st. So if you're interested, make sure you take advantage of that discount. If you have any further questions, just contact me on info@elementshealingandwellbeing.com. But all the information is over there on the website. So I hope to see you here on the Côte d'Azur in October. It would be fantastic to meet you in person and to hang out for the weekend and do all things Ayurveda and yoga. Okay, now let's get back to your questions. Great. Okay, so the next question is from Amy, and she says, is there a way to get natural probiotics, say lacto-fermented foods, without further aggravating a Pitta imbalance? I'm thinking more like a seasonal Pitta disturbance. Thank you. Okay, thanks, Amy, for that question. And again, we have another Pitta aggravating question here. Now, first of all, let me explain that lacto-fermented foods, they're foods that, like vegetables or dairy, that are, or even bread, sometimes bread doughs, that are preserved through a process of fermentation using the beneficial bacteria, which it causes the probiotic bacteria. So fermented foods are usually recommended for people with digestive problems because the fermented food, the process of disintegration that happens during fermentation, means that the food has already begun to break down so that when we eat it, it is easy to digest. And it also has the qualities of sour and pungent in the fermented foods, so they stimulate the digestive fire. Now, Ayurveda tells us that fermented foods are heating and can aggravate the Pitta dosha. However, in small amounts, like a small garnish of fermented food or a small like condiment size of fermented food can aid digestion. And we also understand that in Ayurveda recommends having the 6 tastes in your diet when you're in balance, of course. And those 6 tastes are sweet, sour, salty, bitter, pungent, and astringent. And of course, like if our doshas are aggravated, we may need to modify the taste. But in general, we want all 6 in the diet. Now, in this case, Amy, as you're concerned about aggravating Pitta, I would recommend having fermented foods with Pitta pacifying ingredients. So, for example, in Ayurveda, sometimes it's recommended to have a lassi. Now, a lassi is a cultured yogurt drink, and it's really beneficial because it has that probiotic bacteria which is found in cultured yogurt. And so, if you are having a lassi after meals, which can aid with digestion, that I would recommend that you add some cooling ingredients such as rose water or coconut. So those cooling ingredients will offset the heating effect, the heating quality of the fermented food, of the fermented yogurt. So I hope that makes sense. You could also try small amounts of like coconut kefir, which is the fermented milk drink, and the coconut will balance out the Pitta aggravating qualities again of the fermented kefir. Now, of course, we often think when we think of fermented foods, we often think of like cabbage, like sauerkraut or kimchi. And again, I would recommend that you have those in small amounts. In this case, Amy, I would stick to the fermented foods that have the cooling ingredients. So it would be things like I mentioned coconut or rose, or you could have some with a coriander spice. We know coriander is cooling. So that would offset the heating properties of the fermented foods. In general, my advice would be that if you try a small amount of the fermented foods, and see and have awareness around the effect that it's having on your body. So if after eating a small amount of fermented foods, you notice that you have a stomach ache or that you have loose stool, or that you feel like sharp pains in your stomach, that may be a sign that fermented food is aggravating to you. And of course, we have to be more sensitive in the summer season, which is Pitta season, because the macrocosm, the environment, is causing the elevated Pitta in the microcosm, which is our body. So because it's hot in nature in the northern hemisphere right now in summer season, this will cause a rise of the Pitta dosha in our body. So we have to be very careful that we're not aggravating the Pitta even further. So just be aware of that as you enter the hot months. So I hope that helps you out, Amy. And again, if you need further info, just email me or set up a discovery call and we can chat further. Okay, so now for the next question is from Sherry. And Sherry says she lives in northern Germany. First of all, she says, thank you so much for everything you're doing. I love the podcast. It helped me so much. And each time I learned something new. Thank you, Sherry. I'm very grateful and I'm glad you're finding it helpful. My question is, what's Ayurveda's perspective on OCD and how do you treat it? I have severe OCD or Obsessive Compulsive Disorder, and I'm a germaphobe. I had never noticed it before until my family and friends pointed it out to me. I have to clean my house every single day, and everything has to be in the right place every moment of the day. It's the same with Dinacharya, her daily self-care practices, my workout, and yoga routine. It has become very difficult now because I have extreme lower back pain for a few months, and therefore I can't do my daily chores. This really stresses me out, and I don't know what to do. I'm a Kapha dosha. Again, thank you so much, and keep spreading positivity and love through the beautiful message of Ayurveda. Much love from Germany. Thank you, Sherry, and I'm so glad that you're finding the podcast helpful. And thank you so much for your question today. This is something I really would love to address because I do think that Ayurveda can help with obsessive compulsive disorder or OCD. And as the name suggests, there are two behaviors involved. So I want to explain this for people who are not familiar. There's two behaviors involved in this. There's the obsession and the compulsion. And obsession is a recurrent and intrusive thought, or it could be a feeling, or it could be an idea or a sensation. Whereas a compulsion is a conscious, standardized, recurrent thought or behavior. And that could be things like checking that the door is locked, or checking that you turned off the stove, or counting. Now, the obsessions increase a person's anxiety, whereas carrying out the compulsions reduces that person's anxiety. However, when a person resists carrying out a compulsion, anxiety is increased. And a person with OCD generally realizes that their obsessions and compulsions are irrational. They understand that. And that they may try to ignore them or try to stop them or try to force themselves not to carry out the actions. However, they are usually compelled to carry out the behavior to ease the anxiety. So it's like a vicious cycle. Now, it can be debilitating in everyday life as it really interferes with a person's daily activities and also their social interactions and also the relationships. Now, Ayurveda tells us that an imbalance in the doshas can not only affect our physical body, but also our mental health. We know Ayurveda takes a holistic view of the body. And the vata imbalance can result in anxiety, fear, nervousness, insecurity, restlessness, confusion, and a racing mind. A Pitta imbalance can result in anger and frustration and irritability and being over-analytical and having perfectionist tendencies. And a Kapha imbalance can lead to brain fog and lethargy and possessiveness. And that could be possessiveness of people or things like hoarding. And it can also lead to depression. So there are some of the mental imbalances for each of the doshas. Now, while each person is unique and each case is different, in general, with OCD, it is associated with aggravated vata dosha, which results in the anxiety. And there also may be aggravated pitta, which can cause that perfectionism and having to have everything just so, and particularly if there's, cleanliness involved and having to have everything in very particular and having that perfectionist focused view. So there can be the two of them. Now, Sherry, the fact that you have extreme lower back pain at the moment also indicates an aggravation of the vata dosha. Now, maybe for other reasons, but it would indicate to me that if this is just something that just came on recently, it's not due to an accident or an injury, that this lower back pain can be associated with vata, because vata in the body, the seat of vata is in the lower lumbar spine, and this area can be aggravated when vata is out of balance. Now, there can be many root causes for this vata aggravation, right? Many things can cause it, but just to name a few, it could be due to an incorrect diet. And sometimes, even if we think we're eating healthy foods, they may not be the best foods for our constitution. And this happens a lot when I talk to clients, because we look at the general information out there or the general trends, and we hear that, something, for instance, fermented foods is good for digestion, but it may not necessarily be good for your constitution type. So, that could be something to look at, your diet. An erratic lifestyle can also aggravate vata. things like traveling a lot, just moving a lot, not taking time to sit down and be still, because we know Vatas love to move. But this can be really aggravating if there's a lot of movement. Stress, of course, can aggravate Vata, improper digestion. And we know that when food is not digested properly, undigested food creates ama, or toxins in the body. And so a toxic load in the body can also create mental imbalances and aggravate Vata. And so Ayurvedic treatment of OCD disorder would involve calming the aggravated Vata dosha and perhaps Pitta if that's involved. So also we would want to increase the sattva mental guna, which will really calm the mind. So there is as well as the doshas, we have the mental gunas of rajas, tamas, and sattva. And I have done a whole nother episode on that. You can find that in my library of podcast episodes. But we also want to bring in that sattva mental guna, which creates balance and harmony and calmness and peace and being more in the present moment. So I would highly recommend, Sherry, seeking out a private treatment, of course, so that the diet and lifestyle modifications can be tailored to you, along with the treatments and the mindfulness techniques, which will be really important in this case. But I can certainly give you some general tips today for balancing Vata, and that would be eating freshly cooked meals that are warm, contain good fats. I'm talking about like ghee. That would be a good fat, or avocado or coconut oil, and have grounding qualities. What I mean by that is when you look at your plate of food, it should look substantial. It should look heavy. I'm not talking about comfort foods, right? I'm not talking about foods like with heavy cheeses or anything like that, or desserts. I'm talking about good, wholesome foods, but that look substantial. So things like rice and stews and soups with grains in them, even fresh pasta, things like that would look heavy. And also you want to make sure that your foods are moist, that the foods should have good liquid in them, because Vata has a tendency towards dryness. You want to eat in a calm environment, and definitely making sure that there's not too much sensory stimulation, and making sure that you have some calm time to eat. Focus on your food, say grace before, or give thanks over your food. That gets your body ready to take the food. And try avoid reading or watching TV or doing anything while eating. Just eat. And take some time after you eat just to sit and breathe deeply or meditate after your meals. So that will improve that digestion and calm the body down. I also mentioned practicing mindfulness techniques daily, really important to ground the Vata energies. So things like meditation, maybe doing a focused meditation, because the Vata mind can tend to get really erratic or restless. So focusing on a visual or focusing on counting your breath could really help there. And breath work is really great. I sent out in a newsletter recently, and I have it on my website under the freebies page, the pranayama, the breathwork tutorial. So just check that out on my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com/freebies. And I would recommend the Nadi Shodhana, which is the alternate nostril breathing, or the yogic breath. Both of those are great for calming Vata. The Nadi Shodhana, the alternate nostril breathing, is great for balancing the right and left side of the brain. So that would be one I would really recommend. Slowing things down. So making sure that your life isn't too hectic, doing some slow yoga like a yin or restorative practice. Definitely routine is key for Vata. I know Vatas tend to be spontaneous and like that, but actually routine is one of the best and most balancing ways to live your life. So routine and sleeping times, making sure you're getting to bed around 10 o'clock, getting up at the same time every day. And eating times as well, making sure that you're having consistent, regular, good quality meals. Avoiding raw foods, because that's very hard for the Vata digestion, which tends to be variable, as I mentioned earlier. Avoiding pungent or spicy foods. Avoiding stimulants like caffeine or alcohol. And making sure you're having that daily oil massage. We talk about the Abhyenga oil massage would be really great for you. If you have a tendency towards coolness in the body, if you're high Vata constitution, sesame oil works well. Or you could use like a sunflower oil, or for Pitta, sometimes if there's a lot of heat in the body, recommend like a coconut oil. So there are some general ideas for balancing the Vata dosha. Now, during my research, I did find a study published in PubMed, and it goes back to 2016, and it was on the evaluation of the efficacy of ashwagandha root extract in patients with obsessive compulsive disorder. And it was a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial. Now, ashwagandha is a well-known Ayurvedic herb and really is used to calm Vata, the aggravated Vata dosha. It's used for mental and physical health, and it is also known to have antidepressant qualities as well. But this was the first study of its kind to investigate if ashwagandha could also be used for OCD. Now, the research had 30 participants that were diagnosed with OCD, and they were randomly divided into one group which is going to take the ashwagandha and the other was going to take a placebo. And the participants were instructed to continue taking their OCD medication that they were on for 6 weeks and also take the ashwagandha. And then after the 6 weeks of the supplementation, the scores were put on this. There's a Yale Brown Obsessive Compulsive Scale, which is used measuring OCD symptoms. And the group taking the ashwagandha decreased significantly by 8 points compared to only 2 points by the placebo group. So the conclusion of this study was that ashwagandha root may be an effective adjunct therapy to the standard OCD treatment and may decrease the severity of symptoms for patients with OCD. So that's a study I came across. Now, I have to, again, give another disclaimer here because I don't, in general, recommend herbs because, of course, they have effects on the body too, even though they're natural. Ashwagandha is natural, but it can be heating for the Pitta dosha. So in this case, Sherry, if it is in fact that your Pitta is aggravated along with the Vata, the ashwagandha may be too heating. And this is why, again, I know I'm like a parrot here, but I do recommend that you seek advice before taking anything. And, ashwagandha may be good for calming Vata, but if your Pitta is aggravated as well, then it's going to aggravate your Pitta even further. So again, always recommend seeking some advice before taking any medication, even natural medication. Okay, Sherry, I hope that helps. And again, if you have any further questions, you want me to clarify anything, please reach out. And thanks again for your submission and for your kind words. So the final question today is from Susan, who's in Australia. And Susan says, while most of the world is trying to lose weight, I have always struggled to put on weight. And she said, I'm a Vata dosha with a Pitta imbalance. I know this is common for my dosha type. And as per your instructions, I have given ghee a go, oats, dates, and eating cooked grounding foods, but still can't put on weight. I really don't want to go down the red meat route because I know, according to Ayurveda, eating meat is okay if you're unwell. I have gone to Western doctors and had blood tests, and which, surprise, surprise, have come back as all clear. So I don't know what else to do or eat. I have an office job and I do yoga and walking 3 to 5 days a week. Help. Thanks, Susan. Okay, thanks, Susan, for your question. And I really understand that it must be frustrating when you're trying to gain weight and people don't really give you much compassion because they don't really see it as a big problem, but it can be very challenging. And when the Vata dosha is aggravated, one of the signs of imbalance for Vata can be a low body weight. Now, you say that, Susan, that you have a Vata Pitta constitution, and the two qualities that these two doshas share are light and mobile. Now, we understand in Ayurveda that like increases like and opposites balance. So let's look at the light quality first. We want to make sure that you have the opposite qualities coming in. So we want to make sure instead of light foods, you have nurturing, grounding, heavy foods that have good fats to balance out this light quality. And you mentioned already, Susan, that you're having ghee, which, by the way, is fantastic for you, oats and dates, which are all great. And I would also recommend grains and root vegetables like sweet potatoes and pumpkins and any root vegetables that you can get your hands on, and nuts and seeds and stews. Again, going back to what I talked about earlier in the previous question about balancing Vata, is that substantial food. And you should look at your plate of food and it should look like it's going to ground you with good fats and be moist. And Vata is balanced by a diet of regular meals that are freshly cooked, whole foods, and that are soft or mushy in texture. That's very balancing for Vata. Of course, we want to make sure that the diet is rich in protein and has good fats, and the food should be served warm. And you really want to avoid cold, raw, or dry foods. Now, Susan, it does seem like you have a good understanding of your diet, and I don't think it's necessary to eat meat. However, I would make sure that you have good sources of plant protein in your diet, like hemp seeds or quinoa or chia seeds. Nutritional yeast is another good source, or spirulina, nuts, organic tempeh or tofu also are very good. So make sure that you're having a good protein. But oftentimes when we're trying to gain weight, we're looking at the foods. What I want to draw attention to today and focus on is this other like quality with Pitta and Vata. They share the mobile quality. And oftentimes we forget to look at our lifestyle. So what I would say to you, Susan, is there too much mobility in your life? Are you on the go a lot, which we know Vatas love to do? Or is there a lot of intensity in your work, intensity in your exercise? Like, are you power walking? Those walks that you take 3 to 5 times a week, are you power walking? Are you doing a power yoga class? Is it a hot yoga class? All these things could aggravate both Vata and Pitta. So I would encourage you to look at your lifestyle and see if there is intensity there that could be aggravating Vata and Pitta and causing that mobile quality to aggravate, resulting in the low body weight. And so we know, again, like increases like and opposites balance. So instead of this mobile quality, we want to bring in some grounding qualities, some slow grounding qualities. So instead of doing maybe intense walks and depleting activities, and assuming here, obviously I don't have the detail, but instead I would say slow down. Do more slow yoga. Again, restorative yin. Make sure it's not a hot power yoga. Enjoy your walk. So if you feel like you're marching in these walks or you're really being intense, maybe going with a friend and chilling out a little bit more and doing it at a leisurely pace. So less intensity in life, more moderation, more enjoyment, less competition. You know, I don't know if sometimes if we're in classes, group classes, we can get competitive. So just watch out for those things happening. And definitely bring in some meditation and breath work also to calm Vata, along with the regular substantial meals with good fats and proteins. So when there's low body weight, we often tend to focus on foods, but I would also now, Susan, look at your lifestyle and see what's going on there and see if that's what's causing the aggravation of Vata. I hope that helps, Susan. And again, thanks very much for your question. And as always, if you need further clarification, if you want further information, just reach out to me by email or book a discovery call. I'll be more than happy to help you out there. Okay, everyone, that is all the questions for today. And I really appreciate everyone taking the time submitting their questions. And again, I'll just finish up by saying making sure that you're getting information that's tailored to you so that you're not aggravating yourself further, and getting a tailored strategy. And if you want to reach out, you know, I have, like I mentioned, the discovery call, or I also do the in-depth consultations. And in that 90-minute consultation, the online one that I do with clients, I will spend 60 minutes asking you questions. So I ask you about every aspect of your life and see where those aggravations come from. And I then tailor a strategy looking at all aspects of your life. Thank you for tuning in. I always appreciate your support. If you find that this episode or any of the episodes will help other friends or family members, please share with them. We're trying to spread this word about Ayurveda and really empower people to take charge of their own health, and also to give them support in knowing that their symptoms may only be an imbalance and not necessarily something that they have to live with for the rest of their life. So we want to get this word out there and know that just by lifestyle and diet modifications and maybe some herbal supplements, that they can bring themselves back into balance and thrive in life. So that's our goal in Ayurveda. Thanks again for tuning in. Take good care of yourself. Be well, and ciao for now.